Here at CCM, our membership doesn't need to be told about all the benefits that our main streets bring to our municipalities. From being centers where residents congregate, shop, and eat, to where economic and cultural development happens. We don't need to go on about how much we love our main streets, but sometimes we like to anyway. And we know that the Connecticut Main Street Centers, an organization dedicated to the maintenance and development of these crucial throughways, likes to talk about them too. Today we are joined by their executive director, Michelle McCabe. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. The Municipal Voice is a Connecticut Conference of Municipalities podcast in collaboration with WNHH LP 103.5 FM. I'm your host, Matt Ford. As always, be sure to give us a like and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. CCM's Municipal Voice podcast continues to present a key forum on important state local issues. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the consensus views of CCM or member municipal leaders. Michelle, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about the Connecticut Main Street Center and what it is you do there?
Sure. So Connecticut Main Street Center is a statewide nonprofit, and our role is to support Main Street vibrancy across the state. So that's anywhere from our urban centers to the smallest village center. We're there to help make sure that all of the complicated moving parts that make a great Main Street are well-oiled and functioning. And so I'm the executive director, and my role is to, work with our team to find out what the needs are in the community and to create programming to support them.
That's really interesting. So maybe we can talk about the history then of the organization. I read that it was initially started in cooperation with, I guess, Connecticut Light and Power, but then was spun off at some point after that to kind of become its own independent program. Can you talk about some of that?
Yes, absolutely. So you are correct that Connecticut Light and Power brought this program to Connecticut. So we are what's called a coordinating program for Main Street America. And what a coordinating program does, that shouldn't surprise you given the name, is we work with independent Main Street programs that operate on a community level basis. And so we help with all those independent Main Street programs. So there are actually 41 state coordinating programs in the country, and we are one of those. So Connecticut Light and Power, I will start also by saying that many of these coordinating programs do have relationships with utility companies, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of shared interest in seeing economic vitality across the entirety of the state, and recognizing that a Main Street program is one of those pivotal tools in the toolbox to see communities thrive. And, obviously utility companies want to have businesses and residents and all kinds of people that need power. And so that was the rationale for bringing a coordinating program to the state, because Connecticut Light and Power saw there was a need. And then, as you mentioned, we did spin off. Oh, goodness. This is, as you may or may not know, I'm with the organization since July. So the depths of history over its 25 years, I'm not necessarily going to get all of the
So we're testing how much you've studied everything.
I know, right? I hope I passed my quiz. But yes, we did spin off, and now we're an independent nonprofit. And even though we still have a relationship with Eversource, it is a relationship like we have with a lot of different partners and funders across the state.
So CLP, now known as Eversource, is still a corporate partner friend, but they're not the primary one or anything. You're your own thing, and you just have a lot of people, different groups and partners that you work with. Well, that's good stuff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So you're the state sort of organization for these local organizations, kind of like how CCM, we are the organization of town governments, and then there's the National League of Cities, but we're the state organization. It sounds like we're talking about Boston. Are there other Main Street organizations all over the United States, or is it kind of unique to Connecticut or the Northeast?
No, they are all over. So 41 states have coordinating programs such as ours. And then in some places like Massachusetts, you'll have really large urban centers that might be a coordinating program all on their own, because there are so many smaller Main Street organizations under them that they're helping, to support. So we are not unique in that regard. But I will say that compared to other coordinating programs in other states, The Northeast in particular, I think, is fairly unique in that, for example, Connecticut, we'll work with any community that wants a Main Street experience, or has a Main Street or a commercial corridor, but they don't have a Main Street organization. So we're working with economic development directors. We're working with the heads of cultural districts, as well as working with your sort of traditional Main Street program, like in Westville in New Haven, or Upper Albany in Hartford, or Bridgeport has a DSSD and we work with them. So in that regard, I think Connecticut is really unusual because we're here to support that aspiration. And we're here to be part of the journey towards what we think is the right end result, which is every community should really have an independent entity whose sole job is to focus in on that Main Street, because they're complicated. You know, they're like a garden, really. And you have a lot of moving parts, all of which have to be in balance and harmony and pruned and maintained, and responding to, you know, new challenges, new pressures, new realities, all along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that New England and the Northeast is sort of an interesting environment to be doing this kind of work, because we do have in Connecticut 169 towns, and they all have historic downtown areas that were set up along a main street. And like that idea of community is very deeply ingrained around here. So I imagine,
without question,
these towns were born as small community-focused villages and stuff, and grew from there, but they weren't planned on big grids like, you know, some places out west might have been. They were always, they started with that idea, and then in some cases maybe strayed away from it over the years, and are trying to maybe even get back to that sense of downtown community.
Yes. And actually, it's, I would say, one of the things that I've so enjoyed having joined this organization in this role. I don't know if it's true for everyone that's born and raised in Connecticut like myself, but I will say that it seems to be true that for a state as small as we are, we don't always go too far away from home in our own home state, if you know what I mean. It's probably not unusual for anybody living anywhere, but I have realized, even though, again, born and raised in Connecticut, I haven't seen probably 3/4 of the state, is what I realized in this role. And so my team will tell you that anytime I go out anywhere, I come back like giddy as a school kid.
Yeah.
Totally excited by, oh my gosh, Manchester. Oh my gosh, Torrington. Oh my gosh, Chester. Like I just go completely bananas. And what's so cool is that every community is so interesting and unique. Like they're all like a whole country really unto themselves. And and that's not true in every place. You know, like you were talking about, you know, newer. It's funny to say newer, like after the Louisiana Purchase newer, but you know what I'm saying, like newer cities out west in the Midwest, and communities were built in a very different way. And ours, I think, show the different layers of history, the different, you know, unique architectural styles. And it's really, it's great and it's exciting. And, you know, I love the fact that this organization, we have an opportunity to really celebrate that.
Yeah, I know we hear a lot about transit-oriented development and walkable communities being big buzzwords right now. But you know, as we say, our old towns were born as walkable communities because they were around before cars. So they weren't set up with, you know, main avenues just going in and out of town as fast as possible as the goal. So as you mentioned, like that, you are new at the Main Street Center, and you do get to go out and see these corners of the state that you never explored before, even though you're, you know, a lifelong resident. What are some things that you've learned on some of these, you know, adventures and explorations that were unexpected when you started the job?
I think a lot of what I learned is sort of what I express, which is that there's such an enormous diversity of experience no matter where you go. There are a wide range of cultural traditions and cuisines, and again, buildings and signage and and history and that there's a kind of community for every kind of person in terms of what you're interested in, and even though, to your point, walkability is so important. You can have, for example, walkability in the middle of a rural community as much as you can, in a city neighborhood. And so that's one thing that I would say that has been just really eye-opening for me, just the opportunities to have very different and interesting quality of life choices based on different places that a person can live in the state of Connecticut. And the other thing I would say I've learned is that all of this amazing bounty of opportunity does not come easily. Really great main streets require a ton of work. All in and of themselves, they require a lot of work. So you're looking at things as fundamental as sidewalks that are easy to navigate and that don't have, tree roots pushing up and that they're uneven, so a stroller can't move on them, for example, or a wheelchair or whatever it might be. Parking, trees, signage, wayfinding signage. Your buildings, are they in good shape? Are they not in good shape? Are some of them in good shape? What is the vacancy like? The residents, are there enough places to live? Can the workforce get to and from work? Can they live where their jobs are? They're just, what kind of events are you putting on, and how are you programming that space? So many different things to manage, so many things to cultivate. It's a huge, like I said, it's a huge job. And, our communities do an amazing work with limited resources in many ways. You have folks that have a lot of different obligations that extend beyond Main Street and don't necessarily have the time or the bandwidth as much as they would like to be able to pay attention to all of those different pieces.
You certainly had some successes with the organization, and I know we featured some of the work that's been going on in our magazine, Connecticut Town and City. Can you talk about some of the triumphs that you've had?
Absolutely. Well, the organization has been around for, as I mentioned, about 25 years, and there's been a lot of amazing work that was done over the course of that time. A lot of programs to revitalize downtowns, like Come Home to Downtown, where it was looking to encourage mixed-use development in residential spaces, on top of retail spaces, gatherings and forums, etc. But I will say that in the short time that I've been with the organization, we've been fortunate to have a period of tremendous growth. And with that growth, we have new staff members that can really provide that one-on-one intensive guidance to communities. So we have a new field services director, our education and training director, and events manager who, between the three of them, are conducting over 60 field visits. That's going into communities and sitting down with the folks that are tasked with managing their main streets. We've put on over 16 webinars in the past year plus that covered a range of topics that were really timely, from how to start a cultural district to small scale manufacturing on Main Street to lighting and how important lighting is. We've developed an 86-point assessment tool, which we're really excited about. This is an opportunity for us to go into a community. We look at that Main Street from the 4 points, which is the methodology that we employ, which is how strong is your organization, your board, your staff, your volunteers, the promotion. What are you doing to highlight your Main Street for both the community or for business recruitment, whatever that might be that your vision is. Economic vitality, again, looking at inventorying your businesses, your buildings, your vacancies, and finding the right kinds of businesses and organizations and entertainment venues that would belong on your Main Street. And then design, again, going back to sidewalks and beautification. And so this tool allows us to go in, we score a community in 86 ways. And then they get a report that gives them a whole host of suggestions and connects them to resources to be able to enact a roadmap to whatever their vision is for their Main Street. So we've had some great events. Once the world opened up again, our Spotlight on Main event, we were able to showcase Coventry and Middletown and Torrington and all the exciting goings on their main streets there. So we've had a great year plus.
You are listening to the Municipal Voice on WNHH 103.5 FM. Talking about, being able to get out there again, cultural events and that sort of thing. And one of the programs that we have featured in our magazine is the cultural districts of Connecticut. A lot of people, have a general idea what a cultural district is. It makes sense. It's where the theaters and museums are. But now it is an official designation in the state of Connecticut. Can you talk to us about why putting resources into cultural spaces is important?
Oh, absolutely. It's critical. It is critical for, I would say, all of, if we're looking at the success of Connecticut as a state, I think investing in our cultural assets is important to see those economic benefits realized. I mean, aside from the fact that obviously this sector employs people, it is what brings a Main Street, for example, to life, is when you have theaters and music venues and performance spaces. It brings people into the downtown. It's an opportunity for those same people to patronize restaurants, patronize stores. Children's museums are a huge benefit to Main Street. So, and they also serve another really important purpose that I think doesn't get discussed often enough, which is they build community. They activate a public space and they get people together. They get people to think about, important issues or to feel things emotionally and then connect with each other around those issues. And so I think what's great about the cultural district is, in addition to sort of shining a light on the cultural assets of a community, the fact that you're showing geographically how they're connected, how you can walk from one to the other. It encourages people to spend a whole day in a given community, or a resident to go to their downtown and park their car or walk to their downtown and spend the day there. And also, I think it gives a community an opportunity to cross-market once that cultural district's in place. So it allows for, again, the retailers and the other kinds of businesses on Main Street, for example, the restaurants, for them to partner with their arts and culture organizations in their town to come up with some, unique ways to partner to engage the wider community. Yeah,
that sounds really like it's a big part of what you're trying to do, is get the interconnectedness and the people when they're in to within the cultural district, to go from the theater, maybe get some dinner afterwards, and just kind of really appreciate the interconnectedness of all these things. Where, again, where we are in New Haven, we still have some of the scars of like the urban renewal of the 50s, where the idea was get workers in and out to the suburbs as fast as possible. So they knock down neighborhoods and put, quick roads that are straight along through. And now in the last decades, some of those areas are being redeveloped and they're putting in crosswalks and things to slow traffic, and just that change of attitudes is really interesting. Do you see in the work you do a changing definition of what a successful Main Street looks like? When I think back to my childhood and you talk about going down to Main Street, I'm not gonna say all of it, but they're 5 and dime when you go get the candy, and like that was part of the thing. Like, does the definition of what a downtown looks like change as we progress?
That is such a fantastic question, for a lot of different reasons. I think the one main thing we've discovered in all of this is that flexibility and the opportunity for a Main Street to shift, with built-in resiliency is really important, because even without a global pandemic, people's tastes change, things change. And so one has to be able to adapt. what makes for a successful Main Street today is
Mhm.
still an unanswered question, because we are still, we're still in a state of flux as a
Mhm.
response to what we went through with COVID for the
Mhm.
last year and a half.
Yeah.
I think on the one hand, we're seeing people, as far as where they live,
Mhm.
gravitating towards a Main Street that has a lot going on, that feels alive,
Mhm.
that's attractive, that's busy with people, not necessarily with cars,
Yeah.
busy with people, that's stimulating. We know that having public spaces and the
Mhm.
ability to be in public spaces and out in the outdoors,
Mhm.
that it was critically important when we were in lockdown,
Yeah.
or when we were easing out of lockdown, but we're still very restricted. And we can't lose that focus. We have
Mhm.
to still, I think, view the street as bigger than what we used to view it as.
Yeah.
But I will also say at the same time, it used to be that downtowns and main streets during the day catered to office workers. So now, like, busy times and slow times aren't what they were before the pandemic.
Mhm.
People's behaviors have changed as far as their consumer behavior. So we're
Yeah.
seeing, for example, restaurants are doing well, I think, but we're seeing that some of our arts organizations a little less so, like audience numbers have not returned to what
Mhm.
they were. Not sure why. Maybe it's because an older audience patronized certain establishments more than a younger one, and there's still hesitancy. I'm not sure. Again, retail has really suffered quite a
Mhm.
bit. And I think, again, that's a combination of consumer behavior, but also, if you're seeing the workforce get pushed farther and farther away from their jobs,
Yeah.
it's those jobs in retail and restaurant that are really struggling to find the workers to work there.
Yeah.
So I think that we're still trying to figure out what a vibrant Main Street is going to look like.
Yeah, I imagine that would make the cultural districts even more important when people don't have to go to downtown to go to work. Why do they choose to go downtown? And it has to be the culture, the nightlife, the museums, the restaurants. I imagine that'll only become more and more important as people can work from wherever. So you have to really make reasons for them to come to downtowns
Or reasons to live there. And I
or
think
reasons
that's
to
where
live there.
we're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of, growth and success, is getting people to want to live in downtown,
Mhm.
is definitely, one of the ways forward, undoubtedly.
Yeah. As we continue to have, unoccupied office spaces, maybe some of those spaces are turning over to become residential. It's really
In some
interesting stuff.
places,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really interesting stuff. So you guys do recognize excellence in the programs that you oversee, and you recently announced your 2023 award winners, Liz Shapiro, from the director of the Connecticut Office of Arts, who won the Jack Shanahan Award for Public Services, in part for the Cultural Districts program. Can you talk a little bit about that award and what Liz did to deserve it?
Absolutely. So the Jack Shanahan Award was established in honor of the former director of the Connecticut Historical Commission and the
Hmm.
State Historic Preservation Office, and was a founder and a first board chair of this organization.
Okay.
And so with this award, we recognize public and private sector individuals and organizations that exemplify a high standard of leadership with a
Hmm.
deep commitment to the success of Connecticut's main streets. And so we were really thrilled to honor Liz Shapiro with this particular award because, as you mentioned, she created this incredible program
Yeah.
that not only serves the arts organizations and main streets in how it can function and sort of as a way to
Hmm.
advertise these wonderful assets,
Hmm.
um, but also recognizing that it's a contributing factor to the quality of life that we
Hmm.
treasure so much, here in the state. And so her leadership especially now that we're recovering from the pandemic, with this program, I think is just going to be really key for a lot of municipalities to plot an exciting course forward.
That's really cool. And were there other awards given out in addition to that one?
Yeah, so we have a Founders Award.
Who got that this year?
Kim Parsons Whitaker, who
Okay.
was with Connecticut Main Street for over 20 years and has been such a force in the state to champion this methodology of the 4 points, but also to be a voice for Main Streets, for all of those who need to hear how wonderful they are and how they should be resourced. And so she is now doing amazing work with the Department of Economic and Community Development. And we wanted to thank her on behalf of not only our organization, but also for Main Streets across the state. And we actually, we have a new award this year, the Quentin Williams Downtown Hero Award, named in honor of State Representative Q Williams, whose loss is just absolutely devastating to us and to the state. And he was a real champion for downtowns. He did a lot in Middletown with his downtown and was a member, actually the founding member of the Main Street Working Group at the legislature to make sure that, you know, people were aware of how important Main Streets are. And so this award, it honors those who embody his greatest strengths. So that tireless advocacy, being collaborative, bringing a multitude of voices to the fore. And so we are awarding it to Sarah Nielsen this year, who's the executive director of Simsbury's Main Street program, and her heroic efforts to keep her Main Street and Main Street businesses afloat during the pandemic, when, as we all are scarred by remembering just, you know, how chaotic and frightening and uncertain things were for much of the time. And, you know, she was out there, you know, working tirelessly to make sure that her businesses, you know, were able to get the PPE and the support that they needed. And so we're really excited to be presenting her with that award.
That's really cool. It sounds like she's done a lot of great work, and it's a really nice way to honor Q's memory.
Yes.
Talking about some of the pandemic and, you know, trying to get through it all, and, you know, everyone panicking, trying to figure out like how to deal with it when it all hit. You know, there was a lot of changes that came around rather quickly. One of the things that's visible to us is the explosion of outdoor dining and things like that. Do you support, now that, you know, the pandemic's dying down, the outdoor dining as a continued thing, you know, more of it in our downtowns?
I do think that, you know, certainly part of it is a community by community decision based on where they are. But I will say that overall, absolutely. I think that one of the lessons of the pandemic was that things that we thought we had to do the way we've always done them got completely thrown out the window. And I think we learned a lot about what it means to open up a sidewalk and what it means to close down part of a street, and thinking that, you know, disaster is going to strike because we're doing this crazy thing, and then finding out actually not at all, you know, that it's bringing more people, more foot traffic, more energy, more life to a street. And so, and actually, we do have additional awards of excellence for individual communities.
Oh, cool.
And one of our winners is Norwich. And one of the reasons why we're awarding Norwich is because they started a really great parklet program for their restaurant. Yes. So parklets are those constructed spaces where the outdoor dining takes place. So, you know, some of them have
so it takes up like a little, maybe even a single parking spot or 2 parking spots.
Correct. And so it's actually a constructed space. And so, you know, they can be also beautified and decorated with flowers and lights and et cetera. And they just did a really wonderful job. And Kevin Brown from the Norwich Development Corporation was saying how it really just brought a lot of life to Norwich's downtown. So yeah, I think outdoor dining is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great new way to enjoy a Main Street.
Yeah. And with some of the other things coming out of the pandemic, you mentioned before that you have a lot of webinar stuff. Did some of that come out of adapting to having to do things online?
Oh, undoubtedly, yes. Yes. And I will say this organization did an amazing job of consistently and constantly creating content that was being that was there to guide and engage our members while, again, the world was shut down. And it was about, different ways that they can recover from, think about new best practices, all of that online. And I think that we saw a lot of people were really taking that time to learn about new things that they could do, certainly once the world started opening up a bit.
Yeah.
And I think again, speaking of, things that we learned from this experience, is that online content is great. And, what's wonderful about webinars, we have all of our webinars on our YouTube channel. People are always going back to them, refreshing their memory on certain things that we talked about, can watch them at their leisure. And so it's a really new way to educate and reach people.
Yeah.
But I will say too, we're still going to have a really strong and robust webinar series come our next year. Our next year starts in July. But we're definitely also looking to do more in-person trainings and gatherings as well, because I do think that we're seeing people have missed the experience of being in person with people. And I think there's definitely been an uptick in people's willingness and interest in getting out of the house, putting on a pair of actual slacks and get out of their sweatpants and come and see people. So we'll be doing a lot more of that as well.
Yeah, that is cool. But it sounds like it's not going to replace doing things in person, but it's another tool in the toolbox now that you can use to get your messages out there.
Absolutely. I think that we're on a path to figuring out there are certain activities that are great to be doing in a virtual environment. And then there are certain activities just simply aren't. And so when we were talking, for example, about taking all of our office space and making it into residential, not that we said that, but, I think that we're going to see, things are going to shift and change still. I think that we haven't seen the end of where people are going to choose to be to do certain things, whether those activities are leisure or professional or whatever they may be. I think we're going to see a lot of different options and a lot of different interests.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I guess talking about that, one thing we always kind of like to close out the show with is talking about the future and where we see things going. So what does the future hold for the Connecticut Main Street Center in, 2024 and beyond?
Well, first, I think some of it is building on what we've always done well, which is bringing new best practices, new information and guidance on how to manage a main street. Obviously, what that means has changed a lot and will continue to change. And our organization is, committed to staying on top of what best practices are out there that we can employ. I will say that we are looking to really be an organization that contributes to the larger vision that I know Connecticut has for itself, which is attracting and retaining a skilled workforce, attracting and retaining businesses, and highlighting, again, all of the wonderful things that we have to offer on every main street that exists in Connecticut. All of the beauty and the interesting things and the interesting people, the arts, the culture, and all of that. So, I see Connecticut Main Street continuing doing what it's always done, which is making sure that every community's Main Street is a success.
Yeah. And it sounds like you are. Are you optimistic about the future of the main streets themselves in Connecticut?
Oh, absolutely. I could not be more optimistic, because I think that I can't speak for the past, but I can say for the present, people are really paying attention and caring about main streets. And I also will say that in terms of bringing people together, main streets are everybody's neighborhood. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to commune with each other, to heal together, to spend time together, to be in each other's presence. And I think that, Main Streets have such an important role to play in all of that. So I see Main Streets only becoming more important and critical as we move forward.
Great. Well, Michelle McCabe, thanks for coming on today and talking to us about the Connecticut Main Street Center. It's been really interesting.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
We'd like to thank our guest, Michelle McCabe. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Gateway Community College and Housatonic Community College. Learn more at gatewayct.edu and housatonic.edu. The Municipal Voice is a co-production by CCM and WNHH 103.5 FM. Kevin Maloney is our executive producer. Christopher Gilson is our producer. Harry Draws is on the boards. And I'm Matt Ford, your host. Be sure to check out our Facebook page and give us a like, and watch out for a CCM chat series on our YouTube page.